Okay, let's just get straight on and talk about porringers, shall we? Because that's what we're all here for. That's what I'm here for anyway. I'm assuming that's what you're here for too. If you're not, then, well, just hang around because you might be interested. This is a porringer from my collection. Now, you might be thinking it's rather small, and you'd be right to think that, because it is actually a porringer that dates to around the 1600s. Yes, the 17th century, it's that old, bit like me. And it's pewter, and it's from the Netherlands, and it was actually made for a doll's house. And during that period in the 1600s and into the 1700s, these little replica porringers were hugely popular as kids' toys. Yes, imagine that. Imagine giving this to your kid today and go, hey, look at this wonderful porringer. Why don't you just go and play with it? Anyway, one of the reasons why I think that porringers were more of a kind of drinking vessel than just a sort of decorative kind of dish is because I think they were often used for feeding children, for feeding the elderly, for feeding the infirm, and they were possibly used for all kinds of purposes, for as measurements for ingredients. Now remember, this was a time in the 1600s when you didn't, and the 1700s when these were popular, when you just did not have specific recipes. You didn't have specific measurements, didn't have methods. A lot of it was just guesswork if you were looking at old recipes. So it might have been used for that, just as a general container. Incredibly, I have read that there was a find of one of these in Wiltshire that had a really interesting decorative picture of a woman standing up with her feet facing to the left. Now that to me sounds quite ceremonial, so I wonder if these were sort of used in kind of some sort of ritual way as well. But I'm certain that they were definitely used more as sort of spoons than they were as decorative dishes. But then I also think they had many, many uses. So as I said, this one is probably pewter or some sort of lead alloy. A lot of the later ones were silver, and sometimes they would have, can you see this tiny little handle here? Now, sometimes they would have two of these handles. Often the later ones you see that, or sometimes they would just have one. Now this isn't a particularly decorative one, but these were called ears, and they came in all sorts of designs. So you had like little shamrocks or little fleur-de-lis, or sometimes even little intricate fishes, all kinds of things on them. Absolutely fascinating. And I don't know whether there was some symbolism or meaning behind that, but it really interests me, and I'd love to know more about that. You probably can't see, the camera can't pick it up, I doubt, but there's a tiny little circle there. Can you see, carved in there to show that it was more dish-like, and you can see hopefully by that angle like it was more of a spoon or a bowl. So yeah, this porringer is 3 centimetres in diameter, and your average normal porringer would be about 10 centimetres. They're also frequently associated with porridge and gruel, which I don't think has anything to do with the porringer. You may well have weighed out some measurements of porridge oats in this, but I can't imagine cooking anything on them. I think they were far too small to do that, even though some people have speculated that they might have been used as little sort of bain-maries. But really, I think 10 centimetres, I'm not sure what you would have cooked in that, maybe a flea or a lice or something like that. That's all I can think of. So there's been incredible finds of porringers, many porringers right across the country. There's even been a fascinating find of a glass porringer, a glass one, which I believe was actually quite intact in a manor house in Kilkenny in Ireland. And you've had old wooden ones. Not many of those have survived. In fact, I don't think I've seen any finds of wooden porringers, which is a shame. But this, as I said, this porringer, or porringers generally, have often had that association with porridge. Now, I personally think that has more to do with the old medieval pottage or potager or pottinger that we used to use in Britain anyway, and probably other countries as well, especially in Europe. But specifically a pottage meant a kind of vessel that contained sort of a stew or a vegetable stew or meat or soup or something like that. So a pottage. And as you can see, a pottage and a porringer are kind of quite similar in the way that they sound. And I think that the shape and everything and the form of this very much probably just carried on from that early medieval vessel. And when I talk about a pottage or a pottinger, then really this is kind of the best sort of modern version of that kind of thing that we'd be talking about. So not dissimilar, especially with the little handle that you've got here, but obviously they were more ornate and silver, and I think that's probably where they derive from. So, yeah, I think that's probably all I was going to cover today with porringers, but you'll be able to read a bit more about them in my blog if you head over to my website at histo-archaeology.co.uk, where I've written a whole blog post about the histo-archaeology of spoons. And really, it is absolutely fascinating. I learned lots when I was doing it, and I found out lots of different archaeological finds around spoons which were fascinating that I hadn't found before. And you'll also learn a lot about these. Can you guess what they are? I'm sure you may have seen something like this before. If you haven't, head on over to the website, and it complements this blog, and you'll see this video on the website too, mkhistorian.co.uk.